Let's give some grades. UCF, for the most part, has finished their spring transfer window, bringing in all the players that they're hoping will help next season. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Charge On. As always, I'm your host, Sean Green. Before we get started, as always, a quick word from our sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back. It's finally kind of resembling what we used to have in the home setup, the home studio. It has been a whirlwind of a month. Let me tell you. I mean, you had Magic Basketball. I was covering that. If you guys watched Charge On last week, I apologize. You are getting 2 episodes this week. I spent money for the biggest Wi-Fi package on my cruise. I went to Alaska, was in the Pacific Ocean, spent a lot of money on Wi-Fi, and recorded the pod, and it would not download. So on Sunday, I got that edited in the airport, got it up to you guys, and I appreciate all the kind comments. Of course, regardless, vacation or not, I'm always going to put episodes up. But I am sick as hell. I'm going to be completely honest. I feel awful. I feel terrible. And that's why Nick Geddes is here. Because Nick Geddes, this is going to basically be a Nick Geddes episode because I'm just going to let him talk for a majority of it. But Nick, you're back. He was going to be on the Sunday episode. But again, I was 4 hours behind. Nick was about to go on vacation. We were both on vacation at the same time. It was Nick's birthday, so wish Nick a happy birthday in the comments. But Nick, how are you doing? I know I feel like crap, but how are you doing?
I am great. See, this is what happens. Every time you leave your home state, it feels like you always come back sick.
Yeah.
That just always seems to happen. And you went to Alaska, but dedication, you get points for dedication because I mean, I don't know how you recorded a pod while you were on a cruise and you spent money to record that pod as well because you're so dedicated. So
listen, I don't want the brownie points. Half the reason I bought the Wi-Fi was to watch Magic games on the cruise. That was
our poor Magic.
That was half the reason. I will say, Nick, the cruise, there was 2 times. It was going to Alaska and going back from Alaska where the waters were shaking this boat at an insane rate where I got deathly ill. Like it was that bad. Like I literally was like, and of course when I'm recording this pod, we're kind of in those crazy waters. So I was doing my best there to like have the straight face, but no, you're right. I think I got sick on the
This is why I've never been on a cruise and I don't want to go on a cruise. I don't like big ships like that. Can't do it.
I think you would like. I think if you started out and did like a Bahamas, because that's like not that bad. I mean, it's pretty smooth sailing. That I think it was the cold weather like that just was making the water. I don't know. I'm not like I'm a sports guy. I'm not a scientist or I don't know how that works. But there was only 2 times where it was pretty rough. But I think if you go to like the Bahamas, I think you'd be fine. But I think I got sick on the plane. That's right. this chick right on top right of me was coughing up a lung for 7 hours on the flight back, and I wanted to literally curl up in a ball because I'm like, I know this is going to happen. But listen, enough of that. 4 minutes of vacation talk. Let's get to it. I did my episode on Sunday where we talked about the 3 new players that have committed to UCF. I'm not necessarily sure. I think UCF is out of scholarships. If they don't, they have maybe 1 more or 1 or 2 more. This is basically the roster heading into fall. So I figured we can finally go through the 9 players as of now that have committed and give grades. Again, it's stupid to give grades because we don't know what they're going to do. But me and Nick are going to try and figure out what will their role be coming in, obviously a little bit later, past the spring. Will they make an impact in fall? And what will what is the future looking like for these guys with the UCF program? So, Nick, you ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
All right, we're going to start off with Cedric Hawkins, safety, Ohio State transfer, young guy, went to Ohio State, I think for one season, comes here now. Again, when it comes to these young guys, Nick, we talked about it on one of the pods when he came, but like, he's a player, he's talented, he was a 4-star prospect. I think this year, for me, I'm giving it an A because I think you have to look at it from a next year standpoint or the year after standpoint. I don't see him getting playing time this year, but I think from the fit and losing a safety to gaining a safety, I think it was huge and big time for UCF to get that. Might not make an impact this year. I don't think any of us are expecting that, given the names we're hearing coming out of spring and who's kind of made an impact in the spring, but really excited to see Cedric Hawkins. What do you think about him?
Yeah, if I was putting a grade on it, I think he probably of the 9 guys they've brought in here in this spring cycle, I do think that he has probably the most upside, long-term upside, I would say, for the program. And like you said, I don't think he's going to play a lot right away. Even though this is a position that they had some outgoings, they had some ingoings as well that we can't forget, specifically Brian Threats, who has been pretty impressive so far. And then they also, brought in Deshaun Pace, who's going to play like that star role for them. So I think they're pretty, set back there. They got a lot of junior and senior experience. And Cedric, like you said, hasn't played much football, but the talent is obviously there. So not a short-term sort of solution, but for the long term, I think it's probably, like I said, the most potential of the guys they've added here in this spring cycle.
And again, I think next year is going to be the real interesting year. You have a lot of young guys that it seems like, as at least right now, are going to get an opportunity. Though I'm sure players will get playing time this year. Depth is crucial, as we saw last year in the Big 12, but I think some of these names are going to be crucial heading into next year, and who can kind of take that jump heading into 2025, and I think Hawkins can be one of those guys. All right, Nigel Kelly, edge, obviously transferred from Miami. This was one that a lot of people got really excited about. Obviously, if you look at his transfer ranking, he had a huge transfer ranking. Played behind a lot of great players at Miami. Didn't really see the field all that much. Still saw the field, but not in a starter role or starter minutes. I think this one, Nick, I'm going to give this one a B+. I really like it. You have depth, especially at that position, on the edge position. I think is absolutely crucial. You saw a guy like Malachi Lawrence step up and really take charge of that position. But I think if you're looking at the roster and you're looking at that front four and who can potentially make a name, I think getting a depth piece like Kelly is huge. And again, a potential starter, a guy that didn't play a whole lot at Miami, was behind a bunch of really talented edge guys, comes to UCF, and it's going to be a lot of rotations. So I give it a B+. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll give it a solid B. I think it was good work done. I wasn't sure if they were going to be able to land him, to be honest. It was a slightly more surprising addition to this already what I would say a really good class. For what he did at Miami, I mean, there's some good there, obviously. Injuries last year certainly kind of took him out of Miami's plans and whatnot, and he decides to come here to UCF. And listen, this is going to be, we've been so used to seeing Tremont Morris-Brash and Josh Salazar on both of those ends for the last few years. So 2024 is going to be a big change because Malachi is probably going to get that full-time role, we would assume, on the other side. And then Nigel Leake's going to be in there, probably in the mix to start, I would like to think, at the other edge spot. So a little bit of a different look for UCF for the first time in a while, fills a need. So I'll give it a solid B.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's going to be a lot of rotating guys in. I think there's going to be a couple guys that play a majority of the snaps, but I think at that edge position, it's Malachi Lawrence, and then it's open season. And I think Kelly has a good chance to potentially be a starter heading into this season. All right, we're going to not really talk about Jack Bernstein, but I will say, one of the better long snappers in the portal. UCF is going to be down a long snapper this year. Huh?
It's an important skill.
It is important. And UCF, listen, UCF is long snapper U. I mean, they produce some of the best long snappers, in college football. So they're going to be down a long snapper. I'm going to give it a solid A+. The long snapper is getting an A+ for me because you replaced it. You're going to need one next year.
Yeah, I wish I had some long snapper analysis for you, but I don't have any metrics on that. I just go off what I hear when it comes to these guys. So yeah, I don't even want to talk about him when the season starts. The less we have to say about him, the better.
Exactly. No problems with the long snappers this year. That'd be great. Corner, Traquan Fegans. Now this one, I think, Nick, I'm gonna give it a solid C plus or B minus. Listen, I think Fegans is a talented player. His younger brother, I think this is a clear play at his younger brother. They want to play together. His younger brother's, I think, a top 3 safety in the 25 class. This is a clear play to try and get him to commit as well. I think Traquan has shown that he can be a really good corner. But when you go to USC and you don't get playing time, that's what kind of scares me a little bit. It's like, why do you go to USC and if you're that good, not see the field? So I think it's a wait and see. Again, you're bringing depth into the cornerback room. Personally, I don't think he's going to start. But again, if he started at safety or he played the corner, I think, listen, if he proved that he could play, now at his third school, going from Alabama to USC to here, I'm all for it. So I'll go C plus or B minus range.
Yeah, in regards to his career so far in college, I mean, the 1 year at Bama, which doesn't really count necessarily because I think he might have redshirted that one maybe.
Yeah.
Or he didn't see action, I know that. And then last year in a very tumultuous USC secondary, didn't see much playing time, but again, he was young. So maybe there's some added context there, but I don't know. Once you start getting in the territory of third school in 3 years,
Yep.
I'm not going to go I'm waving my pom-poms necessarily going, he's going to be a big time contributor. Like, I don't know. Three schools in 3 years I'm never going to be comfortable with that, I guess. I don't know. That one's a little too much for me. So we'll see. Like you said, it's probably more of a play at his brother, if anything, but depth, if anything.
Yeah, like again, especially with the cornerback position, I think depth is crucial, especially last year. So again, there's been some young names that have come out that have impressed at the corner position. You might see a freshman starting for UCF, potentially, who knows? Bringing a guy like this in, he has the talent. He had the talent in high school. It's what can he do on his third team? Can he kind of finally put it together and make an impact? And again, we'll see. It might not be this year. It could potentially be next year. But yeah, listen, like depth moves. That's huge. Speaking of depth moves, quarterback. And Nick, I don't think you've talked about Ja'Curry Brown. I don't think you've been on a pod. It's never worked out when he committed to UCF. I don't think we've talked about him together.
Yeah, we got him briefly when they were going after him.
Okay, yeah. I've said it. I've talked about Ja'Curry Brown a million times. I personally, I rate this a B plus to A minus move. I've said you don't know who your starter is going to be next year. You don't. You're bringing in now a 6'4", 235 quarterback that plays a lot like KJ Jefferson. Hasn't gotten an opportunity at Miami to come in, sit a year, and then an open season quarterback competition next year. And that was the one fear was, listen, going into next year, you're going to have a basically junior in Dylan Risk, who this is his second year. If he stays with UCF, that'd be his third year. Then you have basically 2 sophomores, and EJ Colson, Riley Trujillo, kind of taking up another year. And now you add Brown to the mix. So I think Gus said it about you don't want to hit the portal every single year. Because if you're hitting the portal every single year, number one, that's going to hurt you recruiting quarterbacks in the future. Because they're going to know, okay, they're just going to hit the portal. They're not going to give the young guys an opportunity. I think this is the KJ year. And then I think, Nick, next year, Brown is definitely, I would consider him the leader in the clubhouse just by the outside look. But kind of give your thoughts because you haven't talked about him since he's committed. So what does he bring to that quarterback room?
Yeah, he gives you something to go off of in that you've seen him play some snaps here in college football. He even right away when he was a true freshman, he had to start 2 games. I think he appeared in 8 total and everything. And then last year, obviously, he was a little bit lower on the depth chart, but he was a top 20 recruit coming out in that 2022 class, I believe. So came in with a little bit of a pedigree as a 4-star. Again, as we get further away from that, the less that stuff tends to matter.
Yep.
But yeah, the quarterback room is going to be interesting after this year because you start looking at the numbers game, Ja'Cory Brown, Dylan Risk, EJ Colson, Riley Trujillo, whoever else they get in with the 2025 class, like there's probably going to be at least 2 outgoings, I would have to imagine. What it does is if UCF doesn't feel like they want to have to dip back into the portal next year when we get to the winter transfer portal or fall, whatever they want to call it, you might not have to because you already have Ja'Cory, and I think there's going to be a lot of focus on the development of an EJ Colson type for this year.
Yeah, and you didn't even mention it. You mentioned 2025, which is accurate. I mean, I would assume that they are going to add a 2025 quarterback, but the 2026 quarterback class is, in my opinion, the most important quarterback class for UCF in the last decade plus. Like, if you look at the quarterbacks that are from the area, that are in the top 10, it gets you excited. If UCF can grab one of them, like Noah Grubbs from Lake Mary, he's a top guy. You got the quarterback from Cocoa, who's another top guy. These are potential 5-star quarterbacks that are in your backyard. So I think heading into next year, it's going to be a clear-cut competition. I don't think they're going to want to go hit the portal. I think they did hit the portal technically, bringing in Brown. But I think, I agree. I think they're going to try and develop and play one of their guys without having to go in the portal. And if I had to guess of a guy that'll probably enter the portal, it's probably Dylan Risk or Riley Trujillo. That's because the coaching staff seems more in love with EJ Colson. EJ was supposed to be in this class, but he, obviously moved up a class. So they might actually not add a quarterback because technically EJ was supposed to be this class, but it's going to be very interesting. We have a year plus to talk about it, but you have your quarterback this year, and then we'll see if Brown, Colson, Trujillo, Risk, whoever takes that mantle for UCF heading into the 2025 season. You all good with Brown, or you want to move on?
Yeah, we can move on from Brown.
All right. So after Brown, I know you haven't talked about this guy, Penny Boone. Penny Boone. Now, there's a lot of not drama, but he committed to Kentucky, or like he's hopped around. I mean, he was at Toledo, went to Louisville for the spring, decided, I guess, for some reason, grades, or I have no idea, right? I didn't look too hard into it. Committed to Kentucky. I guess Kentucky wouldn't allow his grades to transfer, so now he's at UCF. I found out, Nick, and I might be wrong. I'm pretty confident that he has 1 year of eligibility. He has 1 year. I was under the impression he had more than 1 year, and if he does, great. But I think he has 1 year of eligibility. That would mean I don't want to say I'm confused because I give it an A+. I mean, insurance at the running back position is very vital. UCF has done a lot this offseason to try and make sure they have that insurance, getting a Miles Montgomery from Cincinnati, keeping Johnny Richardson, obviously bringing back RJ Harvey, and then signing a guy like Stacey Gage and Tavion Swint in this upcoming class if he stays committed. You're doing work to ensure, and Frankie Arthur too. So you're doing work to ensure that your next 3 years at the running back position are going to be great. For a guy like Penny Boone, who, let's be real here, probably started out in Kentucky, who's going to come here, if I'm an RJ Harvey, listen, as many good players as you can bring in, that's great. But do you see, I think it's an A+ ad because, again, depth is depth. What do you think?
Yeah, I would give it a solid. I would give it an A for sure. He was maybe the top, or at least the top 3 at the very least, running back in the entire portal. Not necessarily a position of need, I would say, for UCF necessarily, but listen, talent is talent. And it was when they went out and got Penny Boone, it was like, sorry, Johnny, your playing time is getting cut big time. Gone. Because I mean, if you have, as long as you have, and again, cross your fingers, they all stay healthy. I mean, RJ is very capable of just being the bell cow anyway. Yeah. But now you have 2 bell cows essentially. I mean, obviously RJ's done it at a higher level, but being the offensive player of the year in the MAC is nothing to scoff at. And the 1,400 rushing yards and all those things. And, he's another guy, that third school again, but again, there's production that comes with this. It's not just a blank canvas, really. So I like that about him. And you're just trying to put weapons all over the field. Bigger body too. Like I went and did research into him, and he was listed on Toledo's website at 242. I don't know how accurate that is, to be honest. Sometimes those things are really off, but he's listed at that. So definitely a lot of excitement there. I mean, that to me is a top 10 running back duo in the country, at least.
Oh, for sure. I think UCF has, in my opinion, has a top 5 running back room. Because again, like you look at it, you have RJ Harvey, who's going to, again, the disrespect for RJ Harvey, we talked about it last season. It seems like it's gonna be the same this season. Nobody's talking about RJ Harvey after the season he had. But to have him, to have Boone, and then for your third and fourth running backs to be Johnny Richardson and Miles Montgomery. And Miles Montgomery, people have forgotten about Miles Montgomery coming. Right. He's one of the more efficient running backs. He was the most efficient runner on Cincinnati's roster. He wasn't the starter. He was the most efficient. So the depth at running back is huge. And again, God forbid we hope for no injuries, but if there was an injury that did happen, you have the depth to be able to say, okay, RJ Harvey goes down or a Boone goes down. You have depth at that position to still run the football at an effective clip. And I think that's, if I'm Penny Boone, maybe it wasn't my first choice, but you're looking at it like, I know I'm going to get the football. I know I'm going to get playing time. This is a run-first offense call. For people that don't, it's a run-first offense. So I give it an A+. We'll see how they work together. We'll see what the split is. I would assume RJ's getting 90% of the carries, but there's clearly a reason why if you bring in talent like that, they have to see the field. They have to see the field. All right, let's move on to, I think, Nick's favorite ad. This might be Nick's favorite ad of portal season. One of my favorite. I mean, I think from a need standpoint, again, I think UCF has a lot of wide receivers, but depth at that position is crucial. You don't have Javon anymore. You have your 2 starters, right? You have your 2 guys. Jacoby Jones was wanted by many schools. He is a guy that's a deep threat, can go after footballs. And I think when you're looking, we've talked about it, Nick. We've said, who's going to be that third guy, right? You have X, you have Kobe Hudson. Who's going to be that third guy that can really step up and start? And it's hard for transfers, especially transfers. Like, think about I talked about on the last part, all the players that UCF added last season in the spring window got no playing time. There was really no impact player from that. This season, it feels different. It feels like UCF is adding these guys to potentially make an impact right now. So what do you think about Jacoby Jones? I give that an A. I really like the ad. And I think if he comes in and does what I think we both assume he can do, I think he can be that outside guy. Even though X has been playing that outside, position that kind of Javon played and I guess doing pretty well with it, I could totally see Jones coming in and starting from day one. But what is your thought process?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I told you when they were in the mix for him that I would have prioritized him because I think receiver was a spot they needed a little bit of help at. Outside of those 2 guys, it's just because there's a lot of there's just a lot of lack of production overall. I know they've been high on Gerard Baker at times. I'm not really expecting anything really from a Trent Whittemore. Magwood, he came over last year, thought maybe he'd get some play, and as you mentioned, barely saw the field. And I'm drawing blank right now. I think it was it Corey Gamage was the other one that had come over, right?
We were the thought from him was, he's going to make an impact, and I guess he came in out of shape, so that put him back basically the entire year.
Right. So to your point, it's so difficult to project, what's going to happen when these guys really get into full pads and we get, right before the season and everything and whatnot, and who fits the system and who doesn't, but I think Jacoby, again, injured last year, but good track record before that. Very experienced. I think he has just this 1 year left of eligibility. and he fills a need. So I was pretty high on this one.
No, extremely high. And again, we'll see how it all shapes out. That wide receiver room, you can really never guess. You have two clear-cut guys right now that you know are going to be the starters. And then now, like, again, you add another guy to the mix. Who's going to step up? Who's going to step up? Again, would it be a Jared Baker, right? That would be great for him. He showed a lot in spring practices and in the spring game. He could definitely step up and take that 3 spot. But again, Chauncey Magwood, you have guys, Trent Whittemore, you have guys that want the playing time, that came here to play. And Jones is just going to add to that competition, and it adds depth. God forbid somebody goes down, like I've kept saying, if he isn't number 3, but he's number 4, you have a good 4th option on the offense. Only 2 more left. Let's go to Sheldon Arnold. Again, safety. I was not familiar with Sheldon Arnold that much. I just read comments and I watched a little film after he committed where people said that this could be an immediate starter for UCF. Now, I want to preface this by saying, to be completely honest, I do not think he will start for UCF. I think he is going to be a depth piece. That is my personal thought process. I think UCF has an idea of who their starter is going to be. But with that being said, clearly somebody that knows the player better than I do not just toss a comment like that off to the side, Nick. I'm going to give it a B- because I think, again, the safety, corner, secondary position, you need as much help as you can potentially get. And not just help, but quality help. So if this guy brings quality depth to the position, and hell, if he can actually find a way to start immediately, then that's great for UCF.
Yeah, to me, it's like throwing a flyer just out there and seeing if it gets anywhere. That's how I viewed this transfer. A little off the radar, and that's because he played, an FCS ball, but a lot of production.
Yep.
A lot of production last year. He was first team All-American, 87 tackles, 4 picks, 3 forced fumbles, 2 defensive touchdowns. He's got
if
1
year. If you watch his tape, he flies.
Yeah. Playing against the competition he was playing with, he was a big time standout. Again, whether or not he starts, there's a lot of competition there now, and there's nothing wrong with that. I like competition. And to be honest with you, the way that secondary performed last year, they could use some competition. So I'm all for adding bodies to the mix and seeing who truly is the best 4 or 5 guys, whatever package defense they run back there. So yeah, it's a nice little take a flyer on this guy and see what you have. It's only a year, so Well, I think he there was a nice photo going around. He visited UCF back when he was in 2019, I believe. So I'm sure that's really cool for him.
Full circle. A lot of these guys, Nick, are going to be one and dones. I mean, you have a couple exceptions that'll be on the roster next year, but a lot of these guys clearly are coming in to help now, which is why I do think it's a little bit different than maybe last year, because it kind of felt like, UCF is building, for them to play now. But it was more so, we need quality depth. Let's add these guys, see what they bring. This feels like they're going to get playing time early. Let's finish off with Keegan Smith. Went to Central Michigan. Interior offensive lineman, 6'3", 295. I'm going to give this a B because I think... Listen, UCF missed out on the guy they clearly wanted, right? We missed out, went to Florida. I think this was the backup option. I think offensive line is the one thing, and I think all UCF fans agree, offensive line is the one thing that can really derail this season, in my opinion. I think you have one hell of an offense, one hell of a quarterback, running backs, wide receivers. I think defensively, that's up for debate, but I think you have brought in a lot of talent. And I think you have a lot of talent to have a much better defense this year. The offensive line, you bring back a couple guys, but it still scares me. The offensive line scares me a little bit. So, listen, I think you're adding depth. I think we've said depth 55, 60 times in this episode, but you're adding a guy that, hey, you're not expecting him to come in and start, but you're expecting him to come in, and if somebody goes down, He's a plug-in guy. Started a lot of games. So what do you think about this offensive line add?
I think he has a chance to. This is one of the few here that I think has a chance to actually compete for a starting job. Just solely on the fact that he has experience. I think he's 15 starts under his belt, something 1,000 snaps played and 4 sacks allowed. So not bad by any means. Got some size to him, and maybe it's part of me that's going, okay, do I really believe that Adrian Metley is going to just immediately be like? I know they're saying that they expect him to be.
What about Paul Rubelt? Like, we didn't think Paul Rubelt, but it sounds like Paul Rubelt. He's been on the roster for what, 4 years, and sounds like he's probably going to start this year. So it's like,
right. And I know that, Medley too. Like they see him as a starter, maybe at left guard.
Yep.
But Medley at this point is what I think he's already a senior at this point. No.
Yep. I think so.
Barely played any football, man. Barely played any football. So respect to him, by the way, for sticking it out. But maybe it's his time to shine. I don't know. But he hasn't played a lot of football, and now here comes somebody who has played some football and is younger. There's some tape out there on him. And if anything, is going to push him. So that's one of these camp battles that I'll be curious to look at, because I'm on a wait and see approach with Adrian Medley as a starter.
Again, I think there's some good names on the offensive line that you can say, okay, like we hope they can make an impact. I've said, like, the spring game is one thing. You don't really need to take much, or you can't take much. You can't take much from a spring game. But I will say, in that spring game, if we were taking something from it, I thought the offensive line looked bad. That's what I took from it. A lot can change. Again, I think you can, like Caden Kittler, he's probably going to get the starting role at center, potentially. Walt Claire Flynn, maybe. You have a lot of guys. Keon Cox, that was an addition, redshirt freshman. I don't think he'll play, but you added a guy like Jabari Brooks from Samford. I think that's probably a guy that you can safely say would play. So Marcellus Marshall, that's another guy that got, I think he had a solid year, and he's coming back. So it's just a lot of question marks, and it feels awfully eerily similar to last year in the sense of who's going to play center. Who's going to be the starters on the offensive line? And the problem was UCF never figured that out. And I think that is one of the detriments to last season, was the offensive line could never get in a flow. They had one really good game, and then the very next week it'd be one of their worst performances. And then the staff would switch it up. And so it's like, I don't care who starts. As long as it's a good group, you stick with that 5, and we go from there. But it's the only issue I'm having is that we just need some cohesiveness and not so much plug and play. Let's figure it out as we go. Because if we do that, we're going to get killed this year. And KJ will be running around for his life. And we definitely don't need that. So, but that's going to do it. Nick, any final thoughts? Obviously, listen, ESPN ranks UCF 3rd in the transfer portal rankings after the spring. I think UCF is high on everybody's list, but I think there is a little trepidation into how much better UCF will be. And I've kept saying it. It's May. We've got 4 months until, training camp and all that stuff. There's going to be a lot to learn. So we have no idea how this team's going to perform. But with these moves and these additions, as of right now, what do you think of this roster?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's night and day to what it was last year, which was a 6-win roster, and they had to scratch and claw to get there. Yeah. So I feel a lot better going to this season at this point than I did, last year, especially being in the first year in the Big 12 and everything. Important to note, they brought in a lot of transfers, and they, like you said, ESPN had them at 3 in the transfer portal class, and I think just about everybody's got them near the top 10 or whatever. Not all these transfers are going to hit.
No, not
all these transfers are going to play. That's okay. You're just looking for a few of them to come in and really just, hopefully. I mean, let's be honest. Of all the transfers, going back to when they first opened the portal, we need KJ to be the most impactful transfer. There is no 100%. Doubt about that. It's going to start in with what KJ gives you, and that's going to dictate how the season goes. But they've added more depth, like you said. They found a couple guys that are going to start for you, and I think that's all you can ask for. So, but we probably don't need to go crazy about it yet, because like you said, all this could change in 4 months.
No, but like you mentioned it, like Jabari Brooks, potential starter. Threats, potential starter. I mean, you did bring in Dalen Dotson. He's on the edge. I don't know if he's still on the team. I might be wrong. My brain's foggy. Josiah Pierre, potential starter. Ladarius Tennyson, another potential starter. KJ, a starter. So it's last season. I think we've learned over the course of a year that you can't put too much stock in transfers that UCF brings in, because you really have no idea what the thought process is. You might think this guy's going to start, and then you won't see him on the field. So you can't put too much stock into it. But I think if you look at the roster, I agree with you, Nick. I think night and day compared to last year, night and day with depth compared to last year. And it's going to be real interesting to see who kind of makes a name for themselves heading into next season. All right, everybody, that's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed the second episode this week. Hopefully we'll get some more UCF news. UCF basketball, I think we might talk about them next week, depending on if they add some more forwards, because very guard heavy right now. A lot of really good guards. I don't think UCF's going to have as bad an offense for basketball as they have, but they don't have a lot of big men. So we might talk about them next week, but I appreciate you guys all tuning in. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, do all that you do. We greatly appreciate it. All right, everybody, this is going to do it for this week's episode of Charge On. I've been your host, Sean Green. We will see you next week.